I think in the simplest way possible, I genuinely can't find any other way to say this, but I think I died inside. I've been kind of thinking about this for the past couple years. Um, I mean, you could just see it from the videos I post that I just have changed. Like you could just tell from the way I talk, the energy I put in these videos, and those are just sneak peeks into my life as to who I am or who I was, I should say. Now, when I say I died, I don't mean in the literal sense because obviously I'm still here. You know, I can't lie and say I haven't thought about that stuff. I'm not gonna say the exact word, but I will say there have been two times in my life where I have thought about it. Once was when I had my first heartbreak, and the most recent time was within the past couple months. Uh it's a very uncomfortable topic. I'm actually not even sure how to go about it myself, but I will go into the full in depth like of how I think. So I'm also gonna try and not edit this either. I don't really see a reason to edit this unless I just pause for so long while thinking about what to say. But if I was to start at some point, I would start at my childhood. During my childhood, I can't remember a lot of things about it. I'll be honest. Um, you could just chalk that up to just how much time it's been. You could chalk that up to maybe family history. I mean, I think my great grandfather had Alzheimer's, and even my grandmother is forgetting a lot of things. And most likely, I think in my case, I think I just didn't enjoy my childhood as much as others would have. So I just purposely forget it or subconsciously forget it, I guess, in a way to protect myself. Because when I was younger, at least through my childhood, my mother was a very strict person. I mean, in reality, it felt like I couldn't really express myself. And I know that might have not been the case, but I did get a lot of whoopings when I was younger, and I feel like that kind of did put a rough layer of skin on me. I guess it's more of a way for me to like not express myself. And I feel like a lot of people do suffer from this. I'm not gonna say it's like a genderized thing where it's like, ooh, women are more emotional and men just don't show emotions. I don't think it's anything like that. It really does have to do with how you're raised. But going back to the topic, my mother was a very strict person. And I know people from my life when they see her, she's a very extroverted person, she's very open for conversation. But who you see is not who I was raised with. And you're probably wondering, why am I saying all this for YouTube? Why am I saying this for a video? And truthfully, I just couldn't feel comfortable enough to tell somebody one on one. I couldn't tell my girlfriend one on one. I couldn't tell my bestest of friends that I've literally grew up with. And even though this is going on the internet for all to see, saying this right now to just a blank screen and a camera feels like I'm talking to no one. If anything, it feels like I'm talking to myself. So this feels the most comfortable for me. And frankly, I just need to get it out. So my childhood was very strict. I'm not going to say I was like underprivileged or privileged for that matter. My grandmother had a good job, but my mother was a very independent woman. She wanted to get things on her own. While my grandmother did try her best to spoil me, my mother was the type of person where you should earn the things that you want. And that has stuck with me. And I know why I had the childhood that I had. You know, my mom, she had just turned 18, 2 months before I was born. She was a single mother. My dad at the time wasn't the best father figure. I don't hold that against him. I don't have any resentment towards him. But, he didn't graduate high school. As far as I know, he did participate in drug usage. So that did affect me growing up, seeing people with their families, uh, or at least two parental figures in their life where all I had was my mom and my grandmother for majority of the time. If my mother was working two jobs, I was with my grandmother. Or if I wasn't with either of them, I was just home alone. But that's just how it was. And I think that childhood affected me in a way where I don't express myself correctly. There is moments where I feel like my true self does come out, but I just don't know who that is. I don't know who I am, to be honest. If I'm being real honest, I actually don't know who I am. I actually had a conversation with my friend the like a week or two ago where I forgot what we were talking about, but it had to do with video games. And my friend had told me, when we think about a person, we associate them with like a game or like a series or something like that, right? So for him, it would be Final Fantasy, 14 specifically. For my other friend, it would be Souls games. For my other friend, it would be the Batman Arkham series. And for my other friend, it would be any city builder, specifically like Civ. But for me, they couldn't think of anything. So they asked me. It's only natural. And personally, I just couldn't answer. Uh Now I could just let this fly by, it's not that big of a deal, but I did really think about it. And in a way, it's just, I don't really have like a specific series that I know up and down or just like I'll die on a hill for it. I try my best to just like at least try to show some emotion or at least like try to be for one thing, but it's hard for me. I try to think about a series like I think most likely would be Halo, specifically Halo Reach. I love that game to death. It's the one and only game I have actually replayed more than once or twice. Any other game I have probably only played twice at most, like Dead Space. That's probably like the next game. Oh, actually no, I lied. Skyrim. Skyrim and Halo Reach are the only games I have played multiple times. And Warframe, if you even count that, it's a live service, so I had to restart on multiple platforms. But even then, it's like even though I think like that, my friends don't. So it's like, who do people think I am? If I can't even answer that for myself, how do I expect other people to answer it for me? And that kind of eats away at you. I I don't know how to describe it, but it gets you thinking. And moving on from, I guess you could say, how I was raised. My family did try their best to love and care for me, but what they don't know is that they set expectations for me. So, just for a little bit of like context, my grandfather, my mom's dad, he died exactly a year and 2 days before I was born. And that hit the family really hard because he was essentially, I guess you could say, the life of the party. Like everybody loved him, and he was very aspirational. I as far as I'm concerned, he loved animals. I think he was on course to become a veterinarian or some kind of doctor for animal care. Uh, because at least from the stories my family tells me, they used to own snakes, three dogs, They just had all these animals. Even his sister uh, used to have a farm in Florida, and I've seen videos of their animals. It was amazing. That was the first time I saw a goat give birth, natural birth. That was traumatizing, to say the least. Uh, but I'm saying this because my family looked at me as basically his second coming. I never knew him. I only know what my family has told me, and frankly, the way I see it is that they look at me as him. And personally, I know this sounds a little harsh, but I don't know him. And I don't want to be him. I don't want any part of me to be associated with him. I want to be my own person. I've grown up with my mom and my grandmother. They're always saying, "Oh, you're gonna be a lawyer, a doctor, an astronaut." Like this simple stuff that you tell kids all the time. But I kind of took it seriously. Like I was raised by them, so why wouldn't I take their words seriously? But the older I got, the realized the things that I did was not aligning with what they wanted me to do. And I think in the back of my mind, I always felt that, but I never acknowledged it, so I ignored it. I've always loved video games ever since I was younger. It's just been a thing for me. And while recently it has been kind of an unhealthy habit for me, I'll get into more detail about that. It's just something I always go back to. And I've explained this to people in my life where video games at a certain point were a coping method for me. Whenever life has gotten rough, I stay home and I play video games. Now, you could take it how you want to, but that's how I see it. Uh, Now, the reason why I say this is because of who I am. I was raised in Perth Amboy, New Jersey, and if anybody knows anything about Perth Amboy, New Jersey, it is essentially Little DR. The large majority of the population that lives in Perth Amboy is Latin American, Dominican, Puerto Rican, Ecuadorian, you name it. It's all there. You know, if I had to put an estimate, it would probably be like 85 to 90% Hispanic slash Latino, and the rest is European, white, and black. So, growing up the way that I look, I was white skinned. I always had a short haircut. I had straight hair. I didn't speak Spanish when I was younger. Even now, I barely speak Spanish. But there's a reason for that. So growing up, schools that I would go to, and admittedly, even my own family, I was getting called gringo, which is basically just white boy. And it in a way that it kind of hits you as a kid. It's racism basically. Like and there's no other way to put it. It's racism. So I was kind of being ostracized by my own people for the way I look and the way I speak. I still did have my friends, but I was envious of them. They spoke Spanish. You know, they actually had both parental figures and a tight knit family, and I was jealous. I wanted that. I would always ask my mom like, "Hey, like, do you still love dad? Like, whatever happened with that?" And I understand now like why they're not together, but as a kid you don't understand that. So you question things naturally. And I was a little smarter than the average, I would say. Uh I did spend time on the internet, but I knew right from wrong. I knew where I was supposed to be on the internet versus where I wasn't supposed to be. So I was ahead of the learning curve a little bit. And you see these things and you start to connect the dots a little bit. So growing up, you know, basically being ostracized by your own people. I'm also Puerto Rican and Dominican, so being called a white boy by other Puerto Ricans and Dominicans, it gets to you. You feel like an outcast. So that kind of made me not want to even associate myself with Latin American culture. So if I was to put this in simple terms, I didn't want to be Latin, but I'm not white. So what am I? And I would say that's kind of where the seed was planted for my identity issues. Uh, I I kind of tried to cope with that. Other than games, I still had like my friends and all that. I felt comfortable with my friends. Like shout out to Alex. Shout out to Roy. Shout out to Alex's mom because they really helped. Uh, Man, wow, this is harder to say than I thought. Hmm. Whew. Uh, they really helped me out more than I thought. Now that I think about it, and even going into middle school, I still had some of those issues where I was being ostracized. But I had more friends that were more comfortable with me. But I believe that's where I started to have a shift in my personality. I I started to, I would say, being less of a person. I started, you know, reflecting those attitudes of me towards other people. You know, I I would use others as a way to propel my jokes. Of course, it would be seen as like friendly banter between my group, but one of my friends didn't like that, and I think at the time it never really clicked for me. You know, as long as I was getting laughs, I was fine with it, and eventually I did come back to apologize to him. After that, but it still didn't click for me. I was still making those same stupid mistakes, and it just never clicked for me until later on in life. Um, but after my middle school days, I had established myself. Like I had people that knew me, I knew people, and I thought, okay, this is going to be a steady course now. I could grow up and be the person I could possibly go into or grow into, I should say. Sorry. But then I moved. Now, I didn't move very far, but I moved into a different school district. Uh, I moved into the next town over, and essentially what that means is I had to start over. I would be going into a school where nobody knew me. And basically, I had to start from scratch, personality and identity wise. So when I first got to that school, uh, even before the school year started, I think I got there like the week before school started. I joined football. I've always wanted to do football, and my mother had stopped me. And she allowed me to do it. This was a new step for me because my mother had always thrown me into sports. She didn't want me being outside, being influenced by others to do bad things. And I understand that now, but at the time, you know, I was okay with sports, but I didn't want to. I didn't want to do the sports that she wanted me to do. She would put me into baseball, and I would play positions I didn't want to play. And then the baseball team that I was on, the coach, I guess, didn't really like me, so I never really got play time. So I was kind of just wasting my time, essentially. And that ended badly. My mom got exploited, or I'm exploited from money because it was like a travel team, and that really just didn't work out for us as a family. Uh, but going back to the football thing, I joined football, and in a way, I wanted to do football because I liked football as a sport and as entertainment. I watched it on TV, but I also used it as a way to familiarize myself with people from that school district, and it worked for the most part. Like going into the school district. I should probably let this know is when I had my first heartbreak, and that was the first time I thought about death. Uh, I didn't have a male role model to teach me about women and relationships, so I never really knew how to deal with a breakup. I was a heavy lover. I loved very hard. So it hit me a little bit, and that's an understatement. Uh, and I still joke about this with my friend Alex to this day that after my breakup, he actually introduced me to A Boogie with the Hoodie, and that was when he first made his debut album. Which, let me tell you, is not a good album to listen to when you're having your first heartbreak. So shout out to him. But that music kind of, I wouldn't say amplified because the feelings were already there, but I would say it made me think more, especially with the lyrics that I was listening to. And I did take out a knife from the drawer and lay it on my wrist. And I thought about it. I I didn't do it, but I was home alone and vulnerable. And personally, I felt like I had nobody to talk to about it. You know, I held it to my wrist and I pressed it on my skin, but I didn't do it. I don't know what stopped me, but I didn't do it. And I'm happy I didn't do it because my life got so much better after that, or at least in the future. Because I came into high school heartbroken, uh, new faces. I had to prove myself yet once again. But it was good because while I did tell people that I was Puerto Rican and Dominican, I'm not white. I'm just white skinned. I'm white passing. They didn't judge me for it. And in a way, I felt happier being there, which is weird. You know, it was a weird feeling for me. I was raised by Latinos all my life. I should have been more comfortable with being surrounded by other Latinos in Perth Amboy, but I wasn't. But in this new school district, there was so much diversity, and it was relieving. I felt relieved to be surrounded by so many different cultures and so many different interesting people. So I felt okay going into this new arc in my life, I should say. So I was basically the new face on the football team. Now, of course, these were people who were playing with me. They knew each other since they were younger. They were playing, either flag football or the little leagues. I'm sorry, I don't know what they're called, but like the little township football teams. They played for them, and so they all knew each other. So they kind of had this expectation that they were all going to play together on the team starting. And I believe that's where the next step in my life happened, because I ended up starting over somebody. I wasn't good in offense, but I did run track in middle school, so I did have a little bit of speed to me, but what helped me was being pretty smart. Remember what I was talking about? I was a little ahead of the curve. Well, I was a little smart, so I landed the starting safety position. And some people didn't like that. They believed that others deserved to be in that position. That also affected me because not only do I not know them familiar, like in a familiar level, but also I felt like I was already being targeted because of the skills that I had shown. And, the first year it went by fine because we ended up having an 8-1 record freshman team. But I believe throughout that year, as much as I focused on my academics, I think socially I kind of declined. Or I should say, I put my starting point at an awkward level. Throughout my high school years, I pretended to be somebody I wasn't. I didn't really resonate with, I guess you could say, a Latino group. I didn't really resonate with the white group. But I felt really familiar with my friends who were African and Caribbean. So I started to basically act more. I started to act like I was a black person, admittedly. I think I have mentioned this before. I mean, you could just tell from my earlier videos, the way I talk. It's just, I can't even watch myself talk like that anymore. It's just unbearable. But I set a low standard for myself because I was trying to be somebody I wasn't. Now, I have gotten to the point where those same people that I was friends with back then, they know who I am now, and I do talk differently, but they still accept me. But I'll get to that point later on. Looking back, I was disappointed because I was afraid to show who I really was. I never really, showed my true side where I liked video games. I liked different types of music. I liked watching certain things. But the only thing that they saw was, I like rap music. I like making fun of people. Stuff like that. And I kept that persona for years. Throughout the entirety of my high school. Even till the first year of college in 2020. And I think I realized that I should change when I graduated high school. I believe on my graduation day, that's when I realized I was like, I should probably change. But I never really did anything to do that. So, fast forward to my first year of college. I didn't know what the heck I wanted to do. So, I'm already starting at a bad spot. I'm taking general education classes, so at least that way I can think about what I want to do. But I went into college thinking I wanted to be a sports media analyst. I really liked it. I really liked, analyzing, sports games and, trying to see where a team or a player could have done something different, because I did it to myself. I used to play a lot of 2K. I used to play a lot of Madden. And with that, I would take responsibility for myself. And I would be like, okay, I need to play my role and I need to do better. I would fix myself. But I couldn't apply that for some reason to my own real self. So that's what I wanted to do. But then I realized, I would spend the first couple years of my career doing something I didn't want to do until I got to the point of what I wanted to do. So I changed my major. I changed my major like 3 times, I think. So my next major was graphic design. I started taking drawing classes. You know, I have some drawings on my computer. You know, I have my software that I use, but I never really committed myself, I should say. And in a way, I believe I was being lazy. I was unmotivated. And that has a lot to do with, the current situation I'm in right now, but I'll get to that. I was unmotivated, so I also changed that major. So currently I am still listed as liberal arts, English, I believe, and I'm almost done to finish my degree, but that'll come when it does. And during this time, I would say from like late 2020 to basically current, I have been working very hard to change who I am into who I believe I should be, the real me. And let me tell you, I am kind of happier about who I've turned into, but I'm still sad because of how my life is right now. So after COVID had happened, I was working a terrible job. I was working overnights for FedEx. I was doing this for 8 months, so I would work overnight shifts and then nap for like 3 hours and then go to school for another 6 hours and then nap for like another 4 hours if I was lucky. I was essentially killing myself. My health was going down the drain. I still have dark circles under my eyes that have not, gone away. That also is my fault. I occasionally I still go to bed at like 4 a.m. But I'm unemployed, so it's like, I just have no reason to wake up early. But that time really, really took a toll on my health. That's why I will never work a warehouse job ever again. Respect to all those who do, though. But I ended up quitting that job, and I found other occupational opportunities, luckily. But during this time is when I wasn't taking my YouTube seriously. Now, for some input, I've always wanted to do YouTube since like 2011. I used to watch PewDiePie amnesia videos or just his horror videos in general, even before he had a face cam. Like, I've always wanted to do Minecraft videos, and I actually have a Minecraft video uploaded. I believe it's like a 20-minute video with no audio whatsoever, and I was so proud of that. I was so proud of that. And man, let me tell you, I can't even find the video now. I've tried multiple times. I've tried to look under like my different aliases that I've had on my Steam profile because I just named everything the same. But I just couldn't find it. But I was so proud of that. And I've made it my goal to like work towards that. So that also ate away at me not committing to my YouTube channel like I wanted to. Even after I had done everything, like I gotten all the hardware, I gotten all those stuff that I needed to start making videos. It was kind of like a betrayal towards myself. I did reach a certain time where I was uploading almost like 5 videos a week, 4 videos a week, and that was such a fun time, but also not. And I did reach a very dark time in my life that I don't think you guys even know during that time span. So during the time I was doing my little Devil May Cry marathon, specifically during Devil May Cry 3, I believe this was either the second or the third video for Devil May Cry 3. Actually, I would say the entire series. My family was having issues. I'm not going to go into depth, but I will say it was about my little brother. Uh, my little brother is kind of almost in the same situation as I was when I was younger, where, you know, single mom, very strict. But now it's to a point where my mother is like heavily religious, and she's using it as a way to better her life. But I don't think she realizes that it's affecting the people around her. And in a way, that contributes to me not being religious myself. I respect all religions, no matter what it is, but I don't think I will ever dedicate myself to a religion. I I have worked hard to install faith in myself. So I'm the one that I believe in. So I have a thing against practicing religion for myself, because I know if I'm not 100% into it, I'm not going to do it, because what's the point? And I know people are going to be in my comments like, "Oh, it's the belief that matters, you don't have to do everything to the T." And I'm sorry, that's just not who I am. And honestly, I don't need religion to prove that I'm a good person. I will just be a good person. And, you know, when my life is over, whenever that might be, I have faith that good will come to me in the afterlife. But going back to what my mom, uh, like being the way she is, I, uh, I started to think differently about her in a bad way. Um, it felt like I was holding her accountable, basically for neglect. But it is hard being a single mom. But at the same time, I don't know what she does in her personal life. I don't know what she spends her money on, but what she does affects everyone in the household. And I know I could do my part also, but there's only so much that I can do. You know, I want to move out. I'm paying for my own school. She's not helping me. So there was a time where I was just in the red. I was $4,000 in debt because I was helping my mom. And as soon as I stopped helping my mom, I got out of debt. So logic tells me that I cannot be a lifeline. If I want to make it out, I can't. I need to focus on myself. It's sad to say, but I have to. So that's what I'm doing and continuing to do. I To this day, my mom still asks for help, but I just cannot offer it. Especially since I've been unemployed for 4 months and some change, but I just can't. I need to get out because I'm losing it. uh, but yeah, going back to the Devil May Cry series time frame, there was a lot of arguments in the household because my grandmother was living with us, and it was getting pretty violent. And I tried my best to edit it out of the audio in those Devil May Cry videos, but if you listen closely, you could hear some of it. And when you do hear it, you can just see my face. All the life is being sucked out of me. I would say I acknowledge that I'm patient. I have a mental fortitude, but how much can a human take until they just snap? And that's basically what happened recently. I mean, I've been unemployed, and to some people in my family it seems like I'm just not doing anything. And that, in a way, that kind of disrespects me, because I am trying. Like I might not try in other aspects of my life, but if there's one thing, I do want to work. I want money. Money runs the world, sadly. I can't just barter for items that I want. Uh, but I do want to work, and my family just they see me on my days off or when I just have free time on my games, and they just think that all I want to do is play games, and that kind of disrespects me. And this also doesn't help. But going back to the religion thing with my mother, obviously we're in an economic crisis. Nobody could find jobs. Nobody's just hiring, and my mom thinks, even after everything I told her that I tried, she thinks praying will help. Now, I'm not gonna disregard people and their beliefs. I'm never gonna do that. But there has been times where she has told me to pray for a job. I have not. But then I get a job, and then she says, "See, that's God helping you." Now, I don't believe in a God, but to think that someone I don't believe in helped me when all the work that I was putting in to try and get that job was like all me, giving the credit to somebody else and not the person who actually worked towards it, that's, I find that offensive. And I've told my mother that. And it kind of set a boundary between us. So not only am I not close with my father now, but there's also an awkward bridge between me and my mother. And going to my brother now, he was not raised correctly. He was spoiled, silver spoon. And my grandmother she's an enabler. She enables bad habits that my mother she's not around to correct. And sadly, I can't even have a conversation with my brother without him just losing interest in the conversation. I try to ask him questions and he just looks the other way, continues to watch TV and ignore me, or just fools around and stims, basically. And it's not like he has a learning disability or anything. As far as I know, he wasn't born with any, you know, disabilities, but like he could develop something. It's a possibility. And it's like if they continue to raise him like this, how will I ever have a connection with him? I have tried on multiple occasions to be that role model for him, and I try my best. I don't even yell at him, to be honest, because the way my grandmother speaks, she doesn't have a middle ground, and she's just always loud, and she's always yelling and cursing, and I don't want to be another person like that for him. And that continues to this day, even after everything that I've told her. I told her straight to her face. I said, you need to stop. Like, he's going to turn into somebody that he's not going to like. And if we don't do something about it, somebody else will. And he will get hurt. But, my grandmother still infantilizes me. I don't believe she sees me as an adult, to be honest. She still has that baby talk with me, like calling me her baby and stuff like that. It's genuinely weird. And I know some of you have different experiences with your family, but I don't want that. Even when I was younger, I told her, "Hey, like, stop buying me all these things. Like, I want to earn it. Like, at least, like, let's do a trade-off for something, but, like, stop buying me all these things." And to this day, I still get treated as that child. So I get no respect from her. I feel like the black sheep of the family, in simpler terms. I do. Uh, I'm not a hard worker. I don't aspire to be some higher higher role or high in the ladder like corporate person. I don't care about that stuff. I'm completely okay with just, you know, being some cog in the machine. I'm completely okay with it. As long as I can survive and just simply live, I will be completely okay. I will be fine. And some people just don't understand that. I mean, I understand it too, why they don't understand it, because it's like, in this day and age, like, if you're not trying to be like self-made CEO or millionaire, it's like, what are you trying to do? But I know not everybody could be that person, because where would the money go? Like, who's gonna work for you if everybody wants to be a CEO? So I I'm in a weird place, and because I've been unemployed for so long, I've been put in an even darker place, which leads me to the beginning of this video. I had my second thought about death. Now, again, I didn't go through with it. Luckily, I have found a job, but I was getting to my breaking point. I was stressed because I didn't have a job and I had bills to pay. I had a savings, but not anymore. Um, I essentially got my dream car, and I was at risk of losing it. You know, and the people surrounding me did not help with comforting me. Like having people ask you every time they see you, hey, like, how's the job search going? Are you doing this? Are you doing that? And it's like, obviously, I am, but it's the same thing over and over again, and then it's like, oh, why are you so sad? Like, cheer up. And it's like, there's nothing to be happy about. you know, I'm at risk of losing everything. Like, I genuinely thought about just starting to sell things that were important to me, like selling a PlayStation, selling some of my consoles, some things I want to pass down to my like future family members, like this is history, and admittedly it's part of my identity. It's who I am. And of course everybody would want to leave a legacy, but I don't have such shallow thoughts of like a child being my legacy. I want something more. And I want to I want to preface this by saying I believe this YouTube channel is more of like my private diary, or I should say public diary. I think I've come to understand that I'm using this channel to document my life. And I I will, man, I don't even know how to word this. I think I feel comfortable formatting my thoughts in this way than I do talking to someone one on one. I don't know how to explain it. It's just comfortable. Uh, and that leads me to my conclusion, where I believe I have died on the inside. I I'm not the same person as I was, you know, 15 years ago, 10 years ago, even 5 years ago. I'm just not the same person. Uh I also forgot to mention that I actually had an identity crisis back in 2020. That really messed me up to the point where like I just wasn't on social media at all. And that's also why I didn't upload as often. I was uploading like once every like 4 months. Um, but yeah, I'm trying to regain pieces of myself, my true self. And I know some of my friends are gonna watch this and try and hit me up after this. I'm okay. At least now I am. I have a job now. I still have yet to start my first day, but life has been rough forever. And it's nothing against you guys. I know I don't go out like at all. I really just don't leave my house. In a weird way, I hate being here, but I feel most comfortable sitting at this desk. And I know my girlfriend tries her best to get me out the house, but this is where I feel most comfortable. And you could just chalk it up to just video games or just me being with my friends, but whatever it is, that's how I feel. And I am at the point in my life where I don't even like being around my family. I just don't. The only thing keeping me here is my uncle and my brother. My uncle is honestly, he's a role model for me. And my brother is somebody I have a duty to protect. And it's not something that I feel like I'm forced to do. It's something I feel like I have to do because I can't see him grow up in a world where it's just pinned against him. So, like I said, I don't even feel comfortable with my own family. Don't even like being around them, admittedly. Uh, but I do feel comfortable with my friends. So, for those of you in my life that have always questioned it, that's why I act differently when I'm around my family. And essentially, the past 50 some minutes uh, has been the reason why. Uh, I think that's about it. Uh, like, comment, subscribe, and I guess I'll see you in the next video. Bye.